Hey, hi, hello, I'm a cat on the internet. And today, I want to talk about
Plague Star.
Had a different idea for my first video of this style, and I'll talk more about that at the end of this one. But Plague Star is in full swing right now, and since it's a limited event, I wanted to go ahead and get this out while it's still relevant. Now before I get started, I want to be very clear about what this video is, and more importantly, what it is not. This is not a meta guide about the fastest and most optimized setup to get hundreds of forma in an hour. So if you're Legend Rank 5, you have every piece of equipment the game has to offer, this isn't for you. It's also not a beginner guide for people who just started the game, so if you're MR3 and you have limited loadout, it's not for you either. Content of this video is somewhere in between. Been seeing a lot of great videos covering the other two perspectives from much more knowledgeable and experienced creators, and that space is pretty saturated. There's plenty of good info out there if this is your very first Plague Star starting out, where they give you a nice rundown of the event and everything you can get from it. There's also a lot of great videos from the highest level talking about the best group compositions and loadouts and builds and strategies for running the event a million times a minute on Steel Path. My problem with these videos is that they seem to assume you've got 4 competent, high-level players that can run the missions with the utmost optimization. You have 2 options to put these groups together, to my knowledge at least. You can organize beforehand, which I think is a great idea if you're into that sort of thing. Recruit chat is a great place for that, or if you have an active clan, that's probably the best place to start. The other alternative is to play on public and put your trust in randos online. And if you want to go either route, go ham. Thanks for clicking this video, but I'm wasting your time. Godspeed. This is the video I wanted but couldn't find, so this is a detailed, practical solo guide for mid-range tenno. Maybe you're a returning player who's been out of the game for a while and you just came back for this event, or maybe you have a job or a family or some other time commitments that don't allow you hours to sift through videos and optimize builds. Maybe you just want to jump straight in and start shooting at this big dumb idiot. And you just want a build that's current, that works. If you're anything like me, these squad building choices aren't great options. My clan is dead, and I don't really have the patience to coordinate over recruit chat. That's way more text communication than I care to deal with, and that's a lot of all of that to sort through. So you may be thinking, well Fish, you just said earlier that you could play with a public squad. Why don't you just do that? Well, I'll tell you why, unknown disembodied voice in my head. It's very simple. I don't trust strangers. I've already seen people complaining about leeches either not pulling their weight or running off and doing other irrelevant stuff like thumpers or eidolons. Plus, I don't really want to get stuck in a random group with newbies who have no idea what to be doing. No offense, noobs. Nor do I want to be the one holding everyone else back. No offense, me. So there's only one logical solution: avoiding all human interactions. So let's start breaking this down. First off, you gotta have these. And it's easy to search up, because now it's coded to the words Plague Star in the search bar, so type that in. You need the Phylaxis and the Catalyst. In the past, you manually added them during the mission. Now it's just a requirement for you to even be able to select the bounty. If you've done this event before, you keep all of your standing and blueprints, so just make sure you have materials for everything. It's mostly stuff you can get from Plains of Eidolon. Just get you a box-breaking buddy, lots of range, and go ham. Dealer's choice, Limbo, Zaku, whatever works best for you. The only thing really was Plastids. That's separate. That's the one that I kind of had to go out and get. Was running low for some reason. Just go to Saturn and do the Dark Sector survival for a little while. You'll be fine. We'll talk about the missions a little bit. Then I'll tell you a little bit about my builds and my thought processes running these. I can't give you the most optimal speedrun strats ever, but I got a couple of tips. The first part here is pretty simple. Just go in cave and grab thing. You don't even have to shoot the guys if you don't want to. If you get one of these maps with the elevator, you can fall behind it to skip it. Makes it a little tricky getting back up later, but it's fine. You just go, You go right here, and then you go over, and then and then the next step is the defense objective. You fly to this little cart thingy, open it up, and wait. That's it. Do whatever you want for 3 minutes. You're stuck. Sometimes if you're lucky, or unlucky, depending on how you see it, nothing at all will spawn. Go make a sandwich and come back later. Nothing in this part happens automatically, so don't be like me and stand around before the mission starts or after it's done, waiting for something to happen. You gotta interact with this doofloppy here. Then you bring it to this drone thingy. Sometimes it's a little tricky to find. The marker shows you exactly where it is, but then it goes away when you get close. Seems like it's usually pretty close to the center of this big yellow circle though. You have to escort the drone, and there's a handful of ways to speed it up. Volt and Wisp can buff its movement speed, Loki can switch teleport with it, and Nova can set portals in front of it. You want a good line of sight for the portals so it doesn't get stuck somewhere, and also please, please, please make sure you don't fall in the water during this part, because if you do, it seems like it'll bug things out later, and then something like this will happen. Okay, now the fun part. Once you get the drone here, it flies home to its people, and all the infested start coming after you. You gotta kill him to summon a Hemocyte, and he's just a copy-paste version of the second phase of Lephantis. You didn't already know? This guy has a cap on how much damage he can take from a single shot. If you use snipers or bows or something similar, you're kneecapping yourself here. Something with a high rate of fire or a crapload of multi-shot, like a shotgun or whatever. Definitely the way to go. So this is the part where we talk loadout. Some of the more popular choices I see mentioned a lot are the Boar or Strun Incarnins. You just use them for the Incarnin buffs though and never actually switch into Incarnin mode. Also the Piranha Prime has been a meta choice before, and that works out great for me because it's one of my favorite secondaries. The Prime version has this neat ability wherein you kill a couple of guys within a couple of seconds and you get this fancy Ghost version in your offhand, which doubles your magazine size and fire rate for 6 seconds. And if you holster it, the timer pauses. So you can kill some dorks, hit your melee button, and then wait to aim until the weak points open up. If you don't have one, they usually seem to go for between 40 to 60p, although there's a good chance people might hike the price up for the event. I still wouldn't pay more than 100 for it if I were you though. Here's my Piranha build. There's probably still some room for optimization, but this is the quick and dirty method. I've heard people say secondary innervate is the way to go for arcanes on this one, but I didn't notice a huge difference between this and Merciless in my testing. Besides, you gotta kill a few guys to keep the ghost gun up anyway, so I don't find it hard to keep Merciless going. This loadout here is for innervate, but if you want to run Merciless, just take out Hornet Strike, move this over here, put Hollow Point here, and then in this slot I would run Merciless Gunfight instead. Steady Hands isn't an absolute must, but if you can fit it in, you'll thank me later. This gun has stupid recoil when the fire rate buff hits. Now you might be wondering why I'm running pure heat damage on this gun, and if so, you're probably a returning player. You must have been gone a while, so welcome back to Warframe. Damage weaknesses have been completely reworked, and literally all infested anything is just weak to fire, period. No more different armor types or any of that nonsense. Just burn this abomination to the ground, plain and simple. Okay, so people will disagree with me on this one, but I still like the Bursted Incarnin as a primary for this event, even though shooting the boss doesn't charge Incarnin mode. The weak points don't count as headshot weak points, so not only do you not get charged from it, but if you have any headshot mods or arcanes, those are pretty useless here too. However, I find it pretty easy to get charged during the defense missions, since you gotta sit around for about 3 minutes anyway. If you're using the Piranha Prime as your secondary, you can technically do whatever you want here, since that's pretty good at dealing with the boss on its own. You may prefer something with AoE damage to clear some of the ads during the boss fight. I just like this one for dealing with the Grineer head specifically. Sometimes I find it easier to hit his tiny little wall smoth face with something a little bit more accurate. If you run out of charge mid-fight, it's not really that hard to get in a few headshots on some of these random infested dorks between hemocytes anyway. Here's my build for it. Just lots of crit damage, multi-shot, and fire rate. I use regular split chamber instead of the galvanized version since it has a higher initial multi-shot count. It's less overall, but you also have access to the 90% immediately rather than having to build up first. Thermite rounds is just here because I had 8 mod capacity left, and 8 is a weird number for mods. I just plugged this in to squeeze out a little bit more heat damage. You can ignore my arcane since Deadhead is irrelevant to the boss itself. If you want to clean this up a little, maybe bring a companion that can inflict cold status and swap for frostbite or something. You'll notice I've got mods that aren't maxed out on several of my builds. I just haven't spent the time to max everything out, so if you have, you're probably going to need a couple more Forma than I used. You'll get them back in this event anyway. You can also just go with non-primed versions of these mods. My primed mods are only ranked slightly higher than what you would get from maxed out normal version anyway. If you don't have any prime or incarnate weapons, then just grab the biggest, baddest shotgun you've got, and shove it right in the hemocyte's face.
This is my boomstick!
The melee weapon, on the other hand, is, in my opinion, the most important part. This little guy right here is what's going to make or break your run. Shattering Impact strips armor when you hit with impact damage. Doesn't have to be status effect, and it even works when you're not hitting the boss's weak spots. It drops from Drekar Butchers, which are found on the Grineer C-Lab tile sets, and you can buy one for about 5 plat. This boss is dummy thick, so you have to take out its armor if you want to hurt it. The meta choices are the Sarpa and the Vastalok because each bullet will strip 6 armor if the mod is maxed out. The Redeemer doesn't work because the projectiles don't deal impact damage, only blast. The weapon has to deal impact damage for Shattering Impact to work. You can use whatever weapon you want if you don't have a gunblade, but it's going to take a lot longer to fully strip the boss. If you're going to go that route, you'd be better off using an ability to armor strip. The Vastalok and the Sarpa are both fine. I have both, and I've tested both. I prefer the Sarpa because it has an innate polarity for the little triangle guy, and I can fit one more mod in there with literally 0 investment other than hitting max rank. 30 is just enough capacity to jam every single attack speed mod I owned onto this thing. I don't run any companions, just so they don't steal my kills when I'm trying to get headshots, but I'm also stupid, so if you want to run a companion, it's probably a good idea. Something with utility maybe, like Diriga or something for status effects. I don't think your Arcwing choice matters much anymore since all Arcwings can blink now, but it's definitely helpful to have an Arcwing launcher though. That mobility between objectives is a must. Although you can also save yourself a good deal of time by using the fast travel points on the map and not forgetting they exist like I do. You can also try using a Necromech if you're into that sort of thing. They can be pretty good if you know what you're doing with them, but I can't offer you any advice on that since I personally avoid them like the plague. Plague Star? Get it? Because that's the thing that's happening right now. And so the last thing I really want to talk about, if you haven't guessed it already, is the frame itself. Obviously, if you're running this solo, your Warframe is going to be very important. If you're confident enough and you really don't care, you can use just about anything, but there's a few quality of life features I really lean on to make this a lot easier. Like I mentioned before, Loki, Volt, and Nova can all help speed up the drone for the escort mission. I don't really feel like Loki contributes much to the rest of the objectives, but I'm not really a Loki main. Rhino can be a decent choice since he doesn't die, he buffs your damage, and his stomp can slow the boss. He doesn't make any of the rest of the objectives move any faster though, so not my personal choice. Volt and Nova are really the two that I've had the best results with overall. Volt makes everything faster, so he's just a Chad. His speed buff even increases your Arcwing speed, and his shield can help your damage output. If you didn't know because you've been under a rock, again, welcome back, his shield no longer drains energy when you pick it up, so do that. I personally found Volt more difficult than Nova. I had to play a lot more active, and flatlined every time there was a toxin cloud. You might be a better Volt player than me though, so pop off, Queen. That's all you. Nova is my personal choice, and that's who I'm recommending to you. found her to be a little more brain off, and also she's the best girl, so you can fight me on that one, I don't care. Honestly, any good duration build will be decent here. For my returning geezers out of the loop, you no longer need negative strength for speed. For 4 is just tap for slow, hold for fast. If you run narrow-minded, I would try to get out of the negatives for ability range, just to help out when portaling the drone. Molecular Prime Augment helps out when tanking by making Nullstar last longer, which I would definitely recommend because having a higher range stat means these little floaty bits from the Nullstar will run away from you more often. Adaptation is for more tanking, Rolling Guard is to clear status effects, and I guess this is kind of a flex slot. You could put more ability strength here if you have a damage buffing ability on her like I do, or maybe more efficiency. This is a pretty greedy build, so I'm burning through energy restores. Got Vitality on here just to help with toxin damage. Energy Siphon, because again, I'm just using a lot of energy here. You could try like Corrosive Projection or Brief Respite or something if you're not an idiot with your energy like I am. Arcanes, I've got Avenger on here for more crit damage, and Velocity on here for more fire rate for the Piranha. Feel free to experiment with these if you like. Now for Archon Shards, I've got Casting Speed, and this is kind of important. If you try to slow the boss and the ability doesn't go off until the head starts closing, then you're just going to make it take longer for them to open up again. If you don't have any yellow Archon Shards, you should probably just use that flex slot for natural talent. The casting speed is a really nice quality of life bonus. I may end up taking these shards out after the event, but for now, it's a lifesaver. I've also got a couple of reds on here just for extra crit chance on the Piranha. These aren't super relevant to be honest, especially if you're not using your secondary as your main damage dealer against the boss. You could go with ability strength for these 2 slots if you want. I would recommend subsuming over her too with some kind of damage buff, and more strength will definitely help with that. If you don't have a helmet segment yet, I would advise you get that. Not a requirement, but it's a huge help. I went with Zada's Whisper since I use faction mods, and Rhino's Roar is a decent choice, but it kinda works like faction damage already, so it's redundant for my loadout. I also like that Zada's Whisper is technically a separate damage instance and not just a damage increase, so I'm pretty sure if I understand this ability correctly, it helps get around the damage cap a little bit. You could go with Volt or Saren's abilities too, but those require augments, and I didn't want to give up the extra mod slot. Kingineer mentioned in his Plaguestar video the idea of using energized munitions to make your magazine last longer, but I'm not really sold on that idea myself. Use at your own risk. So there you have it. There's my 200 cents on this whole Plaguestar event. This loadout is capable of handling the bounties on Steel Path solo if you want. I found that it takes me roughly 15 minutes to do the level 60 version, and closer to 20 for the Steel Path. I did the math on that, and I can get slightly more standing in 1 hour by doing the level 60 version, but if you're faster at it, you can totally take on the Steel Path version, just by copying my build if you really wanted to. If you made it to the end of this video, thanks for sticking around. This is the first real video I've ever made, so any feedback is welcome. Even if you hated it, and you think I sound like an idiot, put that shit in the comments, man. It fuels me. I had a completely different idea for my first video, and I still got some footage recorded for that one, so I might do that later. It got delayed due to PC issues, and now I'm in the middle of moving, but I really wanted to try to get this out while it was still relevant. I want to do some other stuff, maybe have another channel for fighting game content, and I don't know, I don't really have any ideas for that yet. I do, however, also make music, and all of the music in this video is original. I'll be uploading some of that too, so maybe a separate channel for that one as well. If you're even remotely interested in any of that, stick around. Like the video, subscribe for more stuff later, and leave a comment with any kind of suggestions you might have for future content. Still don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing with this channel yet, so I'd love to hear what you think. I'll just be trying different stuff until I have an audience that tells me what to think and feel, so go ahead and tell me what to think and feel. I'll post links in the description later to the music and things once I get that stuff uploaded, but anyway, that's all I got. Don't forget to love your fellow humans. Bye for meow.